Welcome to Dreadful Dialogue, a podcast all about horror genre. Paul is with me today, and we are going to be chatting about an episode of Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities titled The Autopsy.
Where can you find this show that you're talking about?
It's currently streaming on Netflix. I believe it was created by Netflix, and there's 8 episodes, and this is the 3rd episode that's a part of it.
And this is something we watched together?
Kind of. I think we watched it one time and I was busy cooking or something, so I didn't pay attention. So I had to do a good rewatch, and it's kind of funny because I had no clue what I was watching when I did the rewatch. I didn't pay attention to the title. I didn't even listen to the opening, because then you watch this at the beginning of each episode, Guillermo del Toro comes out and he has like a literal cabinet, and he goes and he opens a little drawer and he pulls out a figure of an item, and he talks a little bit about the plot of what you're about to watch, tells you who the director is, and then the episode starts. I didn't pay attention to any of that. I literally was like, "Hey, I gotta watch this." I started it after all of that, so I had no clue what this one was going to be about. Again, didn't know the title, didn't know anything about the plot.
Okay, so you weren't paying attention to the plot. So why don't you tell us about the plot?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and tell you guys about it. Just guys know from here on out, there's spoilers ahead. If you haven't seen it yet, you're gonna want to hit pause and go check it out, or find something else to listen to. Right, so there's a sheriff. His name is Nate Craven. He's the sheriff of a small town, and he's investigating a mine shaft explosion that they believe is caused by this miner named Joe Allen. And Joe was carrying this mysterious, like, spherical object that he used to trigger the blast. So the sheriff calls up his buddy, Dr. Carl Winters, to come in and help him perform autopsies on the miners. Dr. Carl is currently suffering from terminal cancer. And once he starts doing his autopsies, he realizes that all of the miners are drained of blood. And a little while before he starts to examine Joe Allen, he hears a voice tell him, "Run, get out, now." And then you see all the hairs on his neck stand up as he asks, "Run from what?" Come to find out, Joe Allen is hosting an alien in his body. The show just calls him a traveler. He explains that he caused the explosion as a means of escape because his ship was found, and he reveals that Joe was his unwilling host. And since he lacks his own senses and mobility, he depends on his host for this instead. He also craves pain, and his plan is to possess Dr. Carl next. At this point, a desperate fight ensues for control of Carl's body, and we get to see what happens and what Dr. Carl does to stop him from taking over his body. I found it kind of slow. Did you?
In the beginning,
right?
Yeah. It was a little slow.
So Paul, you found it slow. I found it slow. It took me a while to get into it. I was kind of actually getting bored, but I think it was about like the last 10 minutes into it is when you discover, like, what I discovered anyway. I think for the viewers, maybe they figured it out sooner because if they had an inkling from listening to what Guillermo says, and the title, of course. So during the autopsy, you start to figure out that there is actually an alien, they call it a traveler, inside of Joe Allen. And that's when I actually got really scared. Autopsies itself are kind of scary. I think people are super vulnerable. And once I saw that alien start to come out, and you saw what it was going to do, it was going to take itself out of one body and put it into another body, I was actually starting to like squirm a little. And he's kind of like an octopus looking item. What did you think about the way it looked?
Well, the whole autopsy part was interesting to me. I think I had told you, I'm like, hey, I have autopsied 5 different types of animals in my academic history. Technically, it's called dissection, but I like to say it. Yeah, I autopsied a shark, a pig, I think a frog, a crawfish, and I think the piglet. No, I said piglet. I think it was another type of fish that
I thought you said a crayfish or something. Did you already mention that one?
Crawfish.
Crawfish.
Yeah, a crawfish. A mud bug, as they like to say down south. But they actually did a really good job, I think, at the whole dissection portion of it, the way that it looks. In my experience, granted, I haven't dissected a human, so I don't know if it's how accurate that is. But in terms of actually doing it on other animals, that's kind of what it looks like. But yeah, no, it was interesting to see the doctor, Dr. Carl. Is that what his name was? Yeah, right.
I don't remember his last name, but I'm just gonna call him Carl, and the sheriff was Nate, just to keep it easy, keep it simple.
Dr. Carl, going through his investigation using a reel-to-reel as his recording device, which is pretty cool. You don't really see that. I guess this is dated back in the days.
Yeah, I looked in when the sheriff at the beginning is in his office. You see a picture of President Carter, and so I think that's like late 70s, early 80s, and that was really the only indication I could find as to the time frame, because I was very curious about that, because the radios that they're using are like the big brick ones. The fact that he's using that reel to reel, there's not real. He talks about a pay phone if he needs help because there's not a phone there, and it's like, well, why not a cell phone? So yeah, it was not something that took place in modern times. I'm also glad you cleared it up for the listeners that you've never dissected a human, that you only did it with animals, and that you didn't do it as a child. You did it in your academia.
Yeah. So anyways, I think that was a pretty interesting, the way that they depicted it. And then the whole procedure of Dr. Carl going through and finding the different wounds, kind of putting his theory or his hypothesis together about what could have possibly caused that, and then slowly coming to the realization that there's a parasite that's in play. And I had mentioned this. The doctor, he reminded me of another actor. I actually thought it was him. I think his name was Tony Amendola from Stargate SG-1, which I'm a big fan of. Where that's basically the whole premise of the show. There's a parasite that controls humans, and they're consider them as gods basically. But anyways, that kind of reminded me of that actor because they look very similar.
So did that like contribute to you, since you made that mistake of the actor and that actor was in that type of genre? Did it help you kind of figure out what was going on as well, even though it wasn't the same actor?
Well, when I got that inkling, I was like, "Hey, that's it's exactly like the plot of Stargate SG-1, and in that these aliens, they're technically supposed to be more advanced than us. But they still have to have a host, and they're just parasites, and that's very close to what this the plot was of this show, of this episode, because that parasite basically needed all of our inputs, whether it's sight, smell, talking, hearing. They didn't have it. Locomotion. Well, no, they could still move around.
Oh, okay, but the one in Autopsy.
Yeah. They could still move around, but they had they required everything from the humans to kind of still be able to survive, and so that's very similar in this one, where this alien had to use the human body to do everything else. And so it even explains later on how it lacks all of these different parts because they use their host for all of those senses. So it was a good kind of a tie-in, at least for me, to kind of understand what's going on.
Yeah, so that the actual actor in the Autopsy is F. Murray Abram, by the way. But that, I think that's what started to really scare me about it, was the fact that this alien traveler, parasite, whatever you want to call him, he went into detail about like, yeah, I travel lightly. I don't need all that stuff. I depend on the host for that. And the way that he's meticulously thinking about how he's gonna take himself out of Joe Allen and put himself um into Carl, into the medical examiner, and he's like, oh, I gotta have everything correct, and he's taking his time making it look like he was autopsied himself, the way he's cutting off his overalls and his clothes, and the fact that he's sitting there and how intelligent of a being he is, it started to creep me out because I'm like, that's something that could really happen. I mean, I don't think so. I don't want to think, ignorance is bliss, that think that people can have things inside of them that are controlling them, and that's something that's possible. But I mean, there's a reason why there's so many stories about aliens and about things that are out there that we wonder about, that make such a great contribution to the genre. So this one actually, like I said, not a lot of things actually scare me, but that whole scene scared me. And up until that point, I was pretty bored. And those last 10 minutes, the whole time, my heart was beating. I was totally creeped out, and I really didn't see that coming.
What's great about that is the doctor, Carl, he basically outwits the alien at the end by essentially sabotaging himself. He knew that he was going to get taken over by this parasite, and at the end, he stabs a scalpel in his eyes and his ears, cuts his throat, knowing that he's going to bleed out, and that parasite is going to take over that body and be unable to leave it. And now it is blinded and can't hear, can't speak. So, how smart is that alien then? When he got outsmarted by
just a human,
by a pathetic human. So that's what was kind of cool.
Yeah, the humans kind of got the final laugh on that one. They got the last one up. Do you think Carl would have been so willing to do that if he hadn't had cancer?
Carl was pretty much at the whim of the alien. He wasn't going to be able to escape because he pretty much was paralyzed with everything except his one arm that the alien needed to be able to put him back into his body. So I think he already knew the writing on the wall. So I think he would have still done it regardless of the cancer.
Yeah, because I don't think I think it was a quick decision, because he initially was trying to stab like the alien itself, but his hand couldn't reach because he was still tied up. So then he was like, oh no, this isn't going to work. And that's when he came to the conclusion he was going to have to mutilate himself. And as he said, do some vandalism to his body so that it wouldn't be inhospitable to the alien. And again, at the end, he went ahead and wrote on himself. He wrote play tape, burn body. He was smart enough, and that was what he did tell the alien, because he kind of hinted to the alien, oh, you're forgetting something. And the alien was like, I got this. I know what I'm doing. And he waited till the very end, when it would be too late for the alien to do anything about it, that, hey, I damaged my body. And you forgot that this whole thing was being recorded so that my buddy, the sheriff, Nate, when he comes in, he'll be able to hear it. And he wrote on his body in blood, play tape, burn body.
What this always reminds me of is that movie Fallen, which is, I think, another good horror movie where there's a demon that possesses people, and as the body dies, it's able to possess other people around given a certain distance. So it can only be outside of the body for so long. And I always think of that. So for some reason, when I thought when the sheriff was returning, I knew that in the back of my mind, I thought, oh, he's going to still get get captured by this parasite, because thinking of it as like the demon from Fallen, where it can still go, but apparently not.
Because the message was written on him.
Well, yeah, but it also doesn't have that way of locomotion, so it was stuck in the body, where it couldn't go anywhere.
Got you. Yeah, there were very minimal clues. The only thing that I did keep noticing throughout it were they kept showing scenes of everywhere they went. Like right at the beginning of the show, there's a spider and spider web, and I think they showed that about 4 different times. And I know we mentioned that alien, that the alien looked more like an octopus, but spider and octopus, they're similar looking. They're both got scary elements to them, and that was a bit of foreshadowing that was probably the only foreshadowing that I saw to what was going to happen, but it wasn't enough for me to completely figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that there's some deeper meaning, but of the spiders besides what we kind of take. I'm sure there's some symbolism behind them. Just how the spiders are. Was it? Did it allude to like a bad omen for the people around there? Like they're gonna die because it was kind of like they were looming over the people at the time. So maybe that's what part of it was. But then at the end, also when the parasite was in the body, you kind of see it traveling through like the neurons or something, and those kind of looked like a spider web also. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but it could be.
Yeah, no, that was something that as soon as you said that, I was like, oh yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't even thought about it in that way. I also think that what made this episode so interesting was the fact that he he was dealing with people who were in such a vulnerable spot, right? To me, when I see autopsies, they kind of creep me out because usually, and I could be wrong, I'm not an expert. Autopsies are usually done when there are circumstances that they think a crime or something bad happened to a person. And I love the way that Carl treated them. He kept saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir. This is going to be uncomfortable." And, "Oh, I'm going to have to do this to you." He treated the bodies with such utmost respect during it. And again, that's just the most vulnerable a person can be. I mean, we're all going to die at some point. And he was vulnerable. And then he was almost made vulnerable by by the alien. And yet he overcame it. So I thought that was like such a human touch to the story.
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily just the human touch, but I know when we had to dissect anything, one of the keys is you got to act professional. Like, don't go around playing around with your specimen. You don't treat it badly. You don't go around stabbing it in random places. You're doing it in a respectful manner, as you said, and I'm sure that is a major plot or a major part of uh, autopsying a human. You're trying to respect them as much as possible, and he just takes that to another level by, as you said, even talking to them in a in a respectful manner.
Yeah, I mean, it was the same when I did archaeology work when we were dealing with human remains. The same thing. It wasn't meant to be something to joke about. Um, Same when I was getting my anthropology degree, and we got to go and check on the cadavers to learn some stuff about their biology. The same thing. Before we even met the cadavers, we were told their background story. And when we went in, I mean, they had names, and we treated them very respectfully. It wasn't, we weren't taking pictures and doing strange things with them, or they were treated with respect throughout the interaction from any of the students there on campus. Paul, would you recommend to people to watch the autopsy?
I think it's a good part of the whole Cabinet of Curiosity anthology. This one's a little more science fiction, which I enjoy. So if you like science fiction part of the horror genre, then I think it's a good one. It's very slow, as we had mentioned in the beginning, but it definitely picks up at the end, and it's a little more psychological thriller because it's quiet and it's one person really going through everything. So it's a different style for the horror. It's not a lot of hack and slash or anything of that sort or jump scares. It's more of a psychological one. So I think it's definitely a good one to watch.
Yeah, I'd also recommend it. It's a slow burn. Paul did a really good job of describing that. Yeah, there's not going to be blood and gore. It's not a slasher in any sense. You could probably argue it's a little bit of body horror at the end, but I don't think that's the goal to be body horror. It's just what Carl has to do. Watch it. Don't give up because it is slow. It takes about the last 10 minutes of it to get really good, and it's weird because, like you said, it's super quiet. And then while he starts doing the autopsies, there's just like not classic. There's music from Perry Como and Brenda Lee playing, and it's like happy go lucky. And you're like, okay, where is this movie going? It's gotten slow. Now there's this music, and then boom, the action happens. And once that action happens, it's definitely worth watching. So I also recommend checking it out. I think of all of the ones that are a part of all the episodes of Cabinet of Curiosities, I think this is the strongest one for somebody to watch. So I recommend check it out. Well, thank you for listening to Dreadful Dialogue Podcast. Again, my name is Alyse, and today I had with me Paul. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to check out more of our content, check out our blogs, or find out about future episodes, you can go to our website, dreadfuldialogue.com. We're also on social media at Dreadful Dialogue Podcast. And my personal Instagram is spookyvibes_Alyse. That's ALYSE. We hope you enjoyed the episode and have a good one. This episode is sponsored by PM Digital Web Design. Ready to elevate your business? PM Digital Web Design creates stunning, user-friendly websites tailored just for your small business. Whether you need a simple landing page, a website redesign, or an e-commerce store, PM Digital Web Design can make it work for you. Book your free consultation today at pmdigital.casaslh.com. Let's build something amazing.